The grand race was about to begin, a spectacle of fantasy and speed under the bright lights. Spectators lined the course, their cheers already echoing in the air, creating a palpable wave of excitement. At the center of it all were the two main rivals. First, there was Rumi, poised and focused in her stark white racing suit, a stark contrast to her vibrant purple hair. Her mount was a creature of myth, a skeletal horse, striding with an eerie grace. Accompanying her was Gino, her manager and biggest supporter, his face alight with confidence. He walked beside her, a beacon of encouragement in the overwhelming scene. Then came her adversary, Zoe, a fiery figure with bright red hair, clad in a matching crimson outfit. She rode a magnificent pink Pegasus, its wings spread wide, a symbol of conventional beauty and power. The two racers faced off, a silent challenge passing between them. The skeletal horse and the pink Pegasus stood nose to nose, a perfect image of their riders' opposing natures. In the stands, Gino's faith in Rumi was absolute. He proudly held up a large painted portrait of her, showcasing his champion to the roaring crowd, his expression one of pure adoration and belief. The race began with explosive energy. The two rivals charged down the track, kicking up mud and water as they vied for the lead. It was a grueling course, designed to test the limits of both rider and steed. Rumi and Zoe were neck and neck, their determination etched onto their faces. They were perfectly matched in skill, the tension between them so thick you could cut it with a knife. But then disaster struck as they navigated a particularly treacherous, muddy patch. Rumi's skeletal horse lost its footing. It stumbled, its bony legs unable to find purchase in the thick mire. Rumi was thrown from its back, her graceful form tumbling through the air before she landed hard in the mud. The shock of the fall was visible on her face, her white suit instantly stained. Zoe didn't miss a beat. She glanced back, a cold, triumphant look in her eyes as she saw her rival fall. She spurred her pink Pegasus onward, leaving Rumi and her fallen horse behind without a second thought. The crowd gasped, then erupted into a mix of cheers for the new leader and groans for the fallen favorite. The entire dynamic of the race had shifted in a single muddy moment. Watching from the stands, Gino's adoration curdled into pure rage, his face twisted in fury and disappointment. In a dramatic show of frustration, he tore Rumi's portrait in half, casting the pieces aside. With the track clear, Zoe soared towards the finish line. She crossed it in a burst of speed, colorful ribbons exploding around her as she claimed the victory. The crowd went wild, celebrating their new champion. But Rumi could only watch from the mud, the taste of defeat bitter in her mouth. Gino wasted no time in confronting Rumi. He stormed over to her, his finger pointed accusingly. His words were sharp, his disappointment palpable. "You let me down," his expression screamed. Then, just as quickly, he turned his back on her. He found Zoe amidst the celebration and swept her into a triumphant embrace. Lifting the trophy high, he had switched his allegiance to the winner without a moment's hesitation. Heartbroken and abandoned, Rumi was left alone. She slowly got to her feet and led her skeletal horse away from the noise and the crowds, the weight of her failure and Gino's betrayal heavy on her shoulders. In the quiet moments that followed, away from the judgmental eyes of the world, Rumi tended to her loyal steed. She gently stroked its bony face, a silent promise passing between them. This wasn't over. A new resolve hardened in her eyes. She clenched a handful of grass, her knuckles white. It wasn't just about winning anymore. It was about redemption. She would not be so easily defeated. Her first act was one of care, feeding the skeletal horse. Then she began her work. She gathered mysterious ingredients, grinding them into a paste with a stone mortar and pestle, her movements deliberate and focused. With the magical poultice prepared, she carefully applied it to the horse's bare bones. A faint glow began to emanate from the skeleton, a sign that a powerful transformation was underway. And then the miracle happened. Flesh and pristine white feathers began to sprout and grow, covering the bones, magnificent wings burst forth, and in a matter of moments, the skeletal horse was reborn as a stunning white Pegasus. Rumi and her new Pegasus stood by the water's edge, a picture of renewed hope and power. They were ready to fly, to reclaim what they had lost. She took to the skies, soaring high above the clouds on her magnificent new mount. The feeling was exhilarating, washing away the shame of her earlier defeat. This was where she belonged. She spent time bonding with her transformed companion, grooming its brilliant white coat, strengthening their connection. They were no longer just a rider and a mount. They were a team, united in their purpose. The day of the rematch arrived. Rumi rode her white Pegasus onto the track, and the crowd, which had once witnessed her humiliation, now roared in astonishment and admiration. She was back. Zoe watched her approach, a flicker of disbelief on her face. The two rivals lined up once more, the air crackling with an even greater tension than before. During the race, they exchanged intense glares. The rivalry reignited. This time, the race took them far beyond the stadium, through vast deserts, where the heat shimmered off the sand. Their winged horses galloped across the dunes, two specks of color in an endless landscape. They soared over majestic waterfalls, the spray misting their faces as they pushed their mounts to the limit. The scenery was breathtaking, but neither rider had time to appreciate it. Flying side by side, they exchanged furious glares. This was more than a race. It was a battle of wills, a personal vendetta being settled in the open sky. The final leg of the race brought them back to the muddy track where Rumi had first fallen. But this time, she was prepared. She navigated the treacherous terrain with practiced ease. Now it was Zoe's turn to falter. Perhaps overconfident or unnerved by Rumi's comeback, she lost control. Her pink Pegasus stumbled, and she was thrown to the ground, landing in the exact same mud that had claimed Rumi. Rumi seized her chance. With the final powerful beat of her Pegasus's wings, she surged forward, leaving her fallen rival behind. The path to the finish line was clear. As Rumi raced towards victory, Jinnu, ever the opportunist, once again tore up a poster. This time, it was Zoe's face that was ripped in two. His loyalty had shifted once more. Rumi crossed the finish line, the undisputed champion. She had not only won the race, but had also conquered her own failure. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated triumph. Jinnu, who had once embraced Zoe, now stood over her as she wept in the mud, berating her for her loss. His fickle nature was on full display. He then rushed to Rumi's side, falling to his knees in a grand gesture of apology. But Rumi, basking in her hard, won victory, merely looked down on him, her triumph complete. The rivalry, however, was far from over. The scene shifted to a frozen snow-covered landscape. The challenge had changed from winged horses to high-powered snowmobiles. Rumi and Zoe were at the starting line again, their expressions grim. The snowmobile race began, and they shot across the icy track, kicking up plumes of snow. Once again, misfortune found Rumi. During a difficult stretch, she lost control and her snowmobile spun out, throwing her into a snowbank. It was a devastating repeat of her past failure. Zoe sped past, casting a mocking laugh over her shoulder. She reveled in Rumi's failure, her victory on this new terrain seeming all but assured. Zoe crossed the finish line, celebrating her win with unchecked glee. She had proven herself superior once again, at least for the moment. And just as before, Jinnu was there to twist the knife. He stood over the weeping Rumi, his voice dripping with contempt. "How could you do this? You threw the whole race away. Everyone saw it." He then immediately turned to Zoe, wrapping her in a warm embrace. "You were incredible out there," he cooed, rewarding the winner and abandoning the loser yet again. Zoe melted into his arms, replying, "I love you too," left utterly alone on the vast cold snow track. Rumi's despair was absolute. She dragged her broken snowmobile, a symbol of her repeated humiliation. But this time, her grief gave way to a volcanic rage. She picked up a heavy sledgehammer, and with a primal scream, she began to smash the machine to pieces. Sparks flew as she vented all her pain and frustration. Standing in the wreckage of her failure, holding a trophy from a past victory, she found a new, harder resolve. From the ashes of her defeat, she would rise again, stronger than before. Rumi retreated to her workshop, a sanctuary of steel and ingenuity. She started from scratch, assembling the bare frame of a new snowmobile, her focus absolute. With her protective goggles on, she welded the parts together, the bright flashes of light illuminating her determined face. Each spark was a testament to her unbreakable spirit. She gave her new creation a vibrant green paint job, a color of renewal and envy. This machine would not fail her. It was engineered for one purpose: revenge. The reborn Rumi took her new green snowmobile out for a test run. It cut through the snow with incredible speed and power. She was ready. The rematch was set on an even more treacherous course. This time, the track included a massive frozen lake. Rumi and Zoe faced off, the tension between them colder than the air. They raced up steep, snowy mountains, their engines roaring in the silent landscape. The race was a high-speed duel, each rider pushing their machine to its absolute limit. As they sped across the frozen lake, Zoe, perhaps too aggressive in her attempt to maintain the lead, drove onto a patch of thin ice. With a sickening crack, the ice gave way. Zoe and her snowmobile plunged into the icy water below. Rumi powered past, not with a laugh, but with the cold, hard focus of someone who has earned their victory. Rumi crossed the finish line alone, her arm raised in triumph. She was the snowmobile champion. Her comeback even more spectacular than the last. And what of Jinnu? He was already on the scene, not to help Zoe from the freezing water, but to scold her for her failure. His loyalty, as always, lay with the victor. He even went so far as to kneel before Rumi, presenting a ring in a proposal. But Rumi, empowered by her self-made victory, coolly rejected him. She didn't need him anymore. The saga continued, moving to its third and final act, a water race. The setting was now a vast ocean course with sleek, high-speed race boats. The first race on the water was chaotic. Zoe was more aggressive than ever, piloting her red boat with reckless abandon. She could be heard shouting at Rumi, "Get out of my way." Zoe's aggression paid off. She blasted through the finish line, leaving Rumi in her wake. Confetti and fireworks erupted as she celebrated yet another initial victory. Her victory was celebrated with a massive trophy, surrounded by her adoring fans. She was on top of the world once again. Rumi's boat was damaged, and she was thrown into the water. She struggled, her body weary, to pull herself back onto the damaged vessel, looking utterly defeated. This time, it was Jinnu who delivered the most cutting blow. "This is all your fault. Look at what you've done," he sneered, his words dripping with venom. His harsh words broke her. Rumi began to cry, silent tears streaming down her face as she sat in her broken boat, the weight of this final failure crushing her. To add insult to injury, Rumi had to watch as Jinnu and Zoe stood together against a romantic sunset. They embraced and shared a passionate kiss, sealing their alliance right in front of her. This was her lowest point, but from the depths of this heartbreak, Rumi found her ultimate strength. She returned to her workshop, her expression now a mask of cold, hard determination. She poured all of her pain and fury into her work. She repaired the damaged engine. Her movements, precise and efficient. This wouldn't be just a repair, it would be an upgrade. She painted the boat a brilliant, defiant yellow. It was a statement. She was no longer the victim in white, but a force of nature in her own right. Standing next to her finished creation, Rumi clenched her fist. She was ready for the final showdown. This time, there would be no mistakes. She took her yellow boat to the water, testing its limits, flying over a massive waterfall in a display of incredible power and control. The machine was perfect. The final championship race began. The flag dropped, and the two rivals shot forward. Jinnu could be seen on the sidelines, shouting, though his allegiance was now anyone's guess. Rumi and Zoe were locked in a fierce battle, their boats weaving through narrow canyons, the rock walls a blur on either side. The stakes had never been higher. The weather turned, and a massive storm brewed, the sky darkening ominously. They raced under the shadow of a water spout, a fittingly dramatic backdrop for their final confrontation. But Rumi's focus was unbreakable. Her superior boat and her unyielding will gave her the edge. She began to pull away from Zoe, the yellow boat cutting cleanly through the choppy water. She blasted across the finish line, her hands raised in the air. She had done it. She had overcome every failure, every betrayal, and emerged as the ultimate champion. As the confetti rained down, Rumi lifted the Grand Championship trophy. Jinyu was there, standing by her side, finally and firmly back in her camp. And Zoe, the rival who had caused her so much pain, could only kneel on the dock, weeping in defeat. The cycle was finally complete, with Rumi standing victorious over all her past adversities.